So it's Summer Under the Stars, and on Friday it was Barbra Streisand's day. I was unable to watch any of her films on Friday, but today I watched the four of the films that they showed that I had not seen before. I now think I have about six films featuring Barbra Streisand that I haven't seen, so I'm like getting real close to finishing her filmography. I tracked down these other ones. Um, she's just so good. Even when I don't like the movies, I always like her. And I think it's because she has this really intense energy that I just love. I love her energy. I love her zaniness. I love everything that is her star persona. I just love it. And unfortunately, I think in the mid to early 70s, she got stuck in a bunch of really shit movies. Like For Pete's Sake, I really didn't like For Pete's Sake, even though she's so good. Which brings us to the first film I watched today, The Owl and the Pussycat. It's based on a play. I'm not sure, it was a play also written by Buck Henry. The screenplay is by Buck Henry. Screenplay by Buck Henry, stage play by Bill Manhoff. I don't think it's aged well. The very opening has a whole lot of really bad anti-gay slurs. And then it has some just really not great power dynamics between the man and the woman. And it's not even really a battle of the sexes kind of movie. It's more intelligence over, or like, book intelligence over street slash sexual intelligence. And it sounds like the play also has an interracial relationship mixed in, which makes those power dynamics even grosser when it's like a black man or black woman and a white man. Like, it's just. So then they changed it to make it Barbra Streisand. And so she's playing this sort of ditzy, sometime actress, sometime prostitute who gets kicked out of her apartment because her neighbor, George Segal, tells their landlord that she is a prostitute. And she comes in the middle of the night and berates him and then basically says, I need to stay the night, and then causes so much shenanigans that they both get kicked out and they go and move in with his coworker. And then that causes shenanigans, and then the next thing you know, they're sleeping together, and then the next thing you know, they're breaking up, and then the next thing you know, they're back together. And she's, learning from him, and towards the end, he finally is like, I'm sure you can teach me stuff too. But it really, the bulk of it is that she needs to learn how to speak better, and that she needs to learn how to, be intelligent in terms of book smarts. And it never really shows the fact that the Felix character played by George Segal is just a kind of a bit of a dick face, and is kind of rude to everybody. Which, how many stories about really shitty male authors or wannabe male authors are there where they're like just resentful and awful towards everybody? I feel like it could have been, like a sort of critique of that kind of dude, but it doesn't ever make it that way. And it just always ends up him just being annoying. But I don't think you're supposed to find him annoying. I think in 1970 you were supposed to relate to him, and now it's just like, wow, he's awful. And everything they're doing to the Streisand character is just like, can you just leave her alone? So that's how I felt about that. This was directed by Herbert Ross. But it has friggin' amazing costumes that were done by Bob Mackie, and they're quite great. So there's at least that. The next film I watched, also by Herbert Ross, was Funny Lady, which is the 1975 sequel to Funny Girl, and it's about Fanny Brice's relationship with her third husband, Billy Rose, played by James Caan. She's also still a little bit stuck on Nikki Arnstein, played by Omar Sharif, and then you get some great stuff with Roddy McDowall as well. This film is a bit of a mess, and it's probably a mess because the original cut was like 3 hours long, much like the first film, and the studio told Herbert Ross to get it down to close to 2 hours, so it's 2 hours and 15 minutes, but you can tell that it's been whittled, and so it feels really episodic, and it feels sort of it just doesn't feel right. And I think that's because it probably made more sense when it got to be its full 3 hours. the one thing I did like about it is, unlike Funny Girl, which was very much a big budget Hollywood rom-com or not rom-com, musical in the way that those 60s, stage adaptations into musicals were, but this one is more like a 1930s, which is when it was set, put on a show type um, musical, sort of like Gold Diggers, etc., where all of the music pretty much is on the stage show, unlike in Funny Girl, where there was stage music and her, singing as if she really were singing in real life, even though she wasn't. Those sort of fantastical musical moments. All of the musical moments in this one are, if you're watching it, as an audience is watching it also. It's a very different kind of musical. And I don't know that people want that or wanted that. And musicals were waning anyways. You have a handful of good ones like Cabaret, and Cabaret, was just the best thing ever. So Funny Lady did not do all that well, and I liked aspects of it, but it definitely doesn't feel as cohesive as Funny Girl, and it's hard to not compare the two. So there's that. It's also kind of depressing that both Funny Lady and Funny Girl feature her husbands as the big moments in her life as opposed to her big career moments. Like, what would it be like if we lived in a world where the two big Fanny Brice biopics were really just about Fanny Brice's work, not about her work as it was related to her romances? That's a question. The next film I watched was 1979's The Main Event. This is directed by Howard Zieff and from a screenplay co-written by Gail Parent. And in it, Streisand is a I just lost the word. Perfume connoisseur who creates perfume. She has like one of those noses where she can tell what any scent is. However, her business manager has robbed her of all her money, and as well as several other clients, and gone off to South America. And in order to avoid bankruptcy, she has one asset left. She owns the contract for a fighter played by Ryan O'Neal. However, the fighter's contract that he made with the business manager was that he would lose her money. She's like, no, you're going to make money and you're going to fight. And so she gets him into fighting shape, and they fight. This film is very much a battle of the sexes type film, wherein Streisand's character is clearly the more enlightened one. She's the one that's like, you are sexist and outdated and you need to learn. And Ryan O'Neal's character is very much a chauvinist sort of pig. While they fall in love because it's a romantic comedy, he really doesn't ever learn to be better. He just learns that he kind of likes her. There's a difference. Fortunately, they never make her character any less independent and self-assured than she is. So there's that. That's like a step forward, I think. Because if you've seen any of those like Kate Hepburn, Spencer Tracy movies, often she ends up having to like lower herself, which is part of why I hate those movies. At least in this one, even though they partner up and he doesn't get any better, she at least doesn't have to get any worse for their romance to work. She has a terrible 70s, 80s perm in it, much like she does in A Star is Born. It's unfortunate. But I enjoyed her in this. The last film I watched is her first film as a writer, director, producer, star. This is, of course, Yentl. I have somehow never seen this. I've now seen all of the films she's directed, so that's good. She co-wrote it with Jack Rosenthal, and it has a score and songs by Michel Legrand, who did the Umbrellas of Cherbourg, and it really does feel like a Jewish Umbrellas of Cherbourg, because the songs are sort of story songs. Not that she's singing her dialogue to other people like in Umbrellas of Cherbourg, but it's all like her thoughts are being sung in her head. And I don't always like that. I love Umbrellas of Cherbourg, but I loved the lyrical content of the songs because they were so much a part of her internal struggle. And I love Barbra Streisand's voice, so, I'll take it. The story revolves around Yentl, a Jewish girl living in Poland who wants to learn the Talmud, but women are not supposed to learn the Talmud, so her father started teaching her, but when he dies, she decides to, against the laws, he's teaching her privately. When her father dies, she decides she's going to go to school to learn the Talmud, and she's going to dress as a boy and pretend to be a boy, take her brother's name, and keep studying. When she arrives there, she falls in love with Avigdor, played by Mandy Patinkin, and who's not going to fall in love with Mandy Patinkin, you know what I mean? The sort of love triangle happens when his fiancée, played by Amy Irving, her family makes them break up because they've discovered that his brother has committed suicide and they don't want mental illness in their family. So Avigdor convinces Yentl, now going by, I'm forgetting the name he's going by, Anshel, to marry his love, so that at least she has to marry somebody else, it's somebody that he likes, and someone that she's comfortable with. However, obviously she's a woman, so this is going to cause some problems. That's the rest of the plot. Apparently the ending was a little bit changed from the original story to make it more of a sort of New World hope kind of movie, kind of ending, which sort of makes sense when you look at who was working on it. The film was nominated for 5 Oscars, none of which were for Barbra Streisand. She did not get an Oscar for her acting, her producing, her writing, or her directing. However, she remains the first and the only female director to win a Golden Globe for Best Director, which is just mind-blowing. And there are only 4 other women, or 3 other women. There's 3 women, 6 nominations, because 2 people have twice, something like that. It's ridiculous. Amy Irving was nominated for Best Supporting Actress in this. She is very good. And if you have not seen it, I also recommend Crossing Delancey. It's one of my favorite movies. It's directed by Joan Micklin Silver. So good. This film is so in step with the other films Streisand has directed, with women sort of leading unconventional lives and women trying to make their way in a man's world, or to fight against the ways in which women are supposed to be. So in this one, she is obviously fighting religious laws. In Prince of Tides, she is a grief counselor, and she's sort of working to change people's minds. And in The Mirror Has Two Faces, she's fighting the beauty myth, which is fantastic. And I just think she's such a great director. I want more movies from her. I didn't realize I've been talking for so long. Oh my god. So this is Barbra Streisand, 4 films. I really liked Yentl and enjoyed the main event. Funny Lady's a mess, but bits of it are enjoyable, and The Owl and the Pussycat has not aged well at all. So anyways, Barbra Streisand, she is a national treasure.